3.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 102 of Tuesdays with Perry. We had a false start on Sunday. We were trying to do a special report talking about the LA Smart City conspiracy surrounding the wildfires that gives us motive. So we're going to be talking about that and talking about a few other things. Joe Biden tonight gave his farewell address and was trying to evoke Ike Eisenhower in saying that when he was talking about the military-industrial complex and the technological elite, and he was somehow talking about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. And we all know that this just isn't the case. So let me go over some headlines, and then we're going to bring Perry in here. So first up, we're going to be talking about the California wildfires and some recent developments today. So what we're talking about today is New York Post. Los Angeles Fire Department bosses sent just 5 fire engines to Palisades Fire while holding back 1,000 firefighters and 35 trucks in critical first hours. And even the LA Times breaks in and says LA fire officials could have put engines in Palisades before the fire broke out, and they didn't. And even a former LAFD battalion chief, Rick Crawford, said the plan you're using now for the fire you should have used before the fire. It's known as a staffing tactic, a deployment model. Over the past several days, Crowley and other officials have given the Times varying accounts of how many engines were available to supplement regular deployments. Now, this is talking about Crowley, who's the current chief of the LA Fire Department. An internal planning document obtained by the Times from a source showed that the department said no to deploying an additional 9 engines known as ready reserve engines to fire-prone areas. Those are different engines than the 9 engines that were pre-positioned in Valley and Hollywood. And that was where they put most of the engines where the fire wasn't. Also, we're going to be talking about Information and Technology Agency Smart LA 2028, which is the plan for a smart city in LA for 2028. And here's from the PDF, our vision for Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles envisions a highly digital and connected city in 2028. Everything in walking distance, a 15-minute city. Also, I want to refer to this Associated Press article. Hawaii's governor did not tell reporters he wants to make Lahaina a smart city, because that's what people said, that was coveted area and the local residents were burned out. State Tech reports how Los Angeles plans to become a smarter city by the 2028 Olympics. LA recently released a smart city roadmap that envisions a highly digital and connected future. This plan in State Tech, though, doesn't mention a wildfire. Also, Times Now World says LA wildfires deliberately started to turn Los Angeles into a smart city by 2028, ? Bizarre claim surfaces. Social media posts link the fires to arson, and one suspect arrested in Palisades facing life imprisonment if convicted. The theory alleges a push to transform Los Angeles into a smart city. That's the cause of the fire. That is the motive we're talking about. San Francisco Chronicle reports how did the LA fire start. Here's what we know so far. We know how the fire started. It was arson. They are suggesting, and they were suggesting when this article was written on January 12th, which was 3 days ago, it was utility wires. And now we know that's not true because it started out in wilderness area where the hiking trails were. There are no utility wires there. So they're changing their tune with that. Fox 11 Los Angeles says feds are taking lead in determining the cause of California fires. We know the ATF is involved. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Trump avoids punishment and hush money sentencing. Might talk briefly about that. Also, PolitiFact mentioned that Hurricane Milton is part of Tampa's plan to become a 15-minute city. PolitiFact says that this is false, but this is another claim made by people who think the natural disasters were created on purpose to create 15-minute cities. PolitiFact says no, Hurricane Milton wasn't planned to turn Tampa into 15-minute cities, and then it talks about weather modification did not cause Hurricane Milton. How do they know? We don't really know. And then, of course, 15-minute city is a smart city. It's an urban planning concept for designing cities. The residents meet basic needs with a short walk or bike from their home. It has been the target of conspiracy theories about other disasters, including the 2023 Hawaii wildfires, which we just talked about. All right, let's see if we can't get Perry on the line here. Is he there?
Hey there, Rudy.
Hey, Perry, welcome. It's great to talk to you again. We haven't talked in a few weeks now. We tried to get a special report going on Sunday talking about these very things, talking about the California wildfires. And now we have a little more news to talk about. The Joe Biden just minutes ago finished his farewell speech, evoking Ike Eisenhower, trying to say that Trump is the military-industrial complex, the technological elite with Elon Musk, and that they will be supporting an oligarchy that apparently is going to be authoritarian in nature. So why don't we start off, if you don't mind, a few comments on Joe Biden's farewell address? Well, we're all pleased to see him go, I'm sure.
Well, he's Irish, so it's never really farewell. And that's not a slight against Irish people. I'll be honest with you and your viewers, Rudy. I didn't want to waste a millisecond of my otherwise valuable time watching this mannequin recite lines that were written by faceless leftists, and that's all this was. He doesn't, your viewers have heard me say it many times over the past 2.5 years. The man doesn't know what he had for breakfast this morning. He doesn't even know what he read off the desk, the resident desk where he signed off tonight. So whatever he said, I've heard it before. I choose not to listen to it again. I am just thrilled that we are now inside of 5 days before Donaldus Magnus puts his hand on the Bible and takes the oath again. Because Lord knows they can't come soon enough.
You think he's safe in these next 5 days?
No, he's not going to be safe tonight. He's not going to be safe once he does hopefully take the oath. He's not going to be safe after he takes the oath. He may not be safe even when his term expires, hopefully 4 years from now. So I'm just looking forward to Monday, and let's leave it there.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's leave it there. All right, let's switch back to what we were talking about on Sunday. Now there's a new wrinkle. Apparently, the pre-positioning tactic of this fire would have had more engines pre-positioned in Palisades where the fire actually began. Then they sent their pre-positioned Apparently, they were pre-positioned in other areas near Hollywood and other areas in the valley. And this goes on top of what we already know, which the reservoir above the Palisades was drained, not to mention that we have the communist mayor was out of the country, among other things, very mysterious things going on here that seem to let the fire burn through much of the LA suburban neighborhoods. So,
well, let's not forget that her deputy mayor is under investigation, and from what I understand, he also has been removed from his office until he is clear. So not only did you not have the mayor of Los Angeles there at the time she should have been there was no one there of elected office prepared to issue orders for the benefit of all the citizens and residents of LA when this started. And so it's important for your viewers to understand that when you go back to the very first few hours, the very first 24 hours, there was no one there issuing orders except for the fire chief and under normal and the LA County Sheriff and the LA City Police Chief. And those are the people you need to hear most. But they're not elected officials. They're appointed.
Right.
I'm sorry, the sheriff is elected.
Right.
But that's for the county, not for the city. The city of Los Angeles, which it's somewhere between 4 and 7 million people, there was no one that had civil responsibility, held elected office there to get in front of the cameras and say, we have this under control, or we don't have this under control. People in these areas, if you haven't already made efforts to get out, make sure you do it now. The only people that were issuing those orders were first responders.
Right.
That, for most people inside the city limits of LA, or pick any city, it doesn't matter where, but in this case, LA, that's what you have elected officials for. And there was not a single elected official inside the city of Los Angeles for the first couple of days to inform people as to what was happening, what steps they needed to take to secure their own personal safety, and to reassure them, we're going to get this under control.
Yeah.
There was no one there to do that.
Well, there was Joe Biden was there, and I forgot, I skipped this. The USA Today was reporting the Biden administration didn't block firefighting aircraft during LA visit. And they say on USA Today that firefighting aircraft could have gotten the clearance to fly because it was restricted if they just called the flight control and asked, but nobody did. Nobody asked. Nobody was given permission. So during those early hours, they were and I shouldn't say no, but they weren't enough aircraft in the air trying to fight those fires when they were still in the wilderness areas where there weren't fire trucks ready.
Well, I can't prove that to be a lie, but I'm just going to say for the sake of our conversation this evening, that's a bold-faced lie. Because the fact of the matter is, and again, not to make him out to be a god, all you got to do is listen to what Dan Bongino has said repeatedly over and over again about the presidential Secret Service detail. Wherever the president of the United States goes, that flight space is controlled not only by the FAA,
right,
but by the Secret Service.
Yeah.
And you can't just simply go to the flight control official in the tower at LAX and say, hey, I got to get up in the air. I'm trying to put fires out. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. And Joe Biden didn't really give a shit.
Right.
He was more concerned about spending the American taxpayers' dollars to fly AF-1 all the way from DC out to LAX so he could go visit his reformed drug addict son and his newest wife after she's given birth. I'm sorry, not his son. Beg your pardon. I think it's a grandson. Whose wife gave birth to Biden's first great grandson. And that's all he wanted to talk about. I don't know how many of your viewers saw the utter nonsense that came out of the man's mouth. I know that Newsome had to be humiliated standing next to the man talking about, oh, I have good news.
Yeah.
I'm a great grandfather. In the meantime, you've got 150,000 people whose homes are in the process of burning to the ground. But we're happy for you, Uncle Joe. You're a great grandfather. Good for you. Now get the fuck out of L.A. so we can get our aircraft back up in the air, which, by the way, had to be kept on the ground for a couple of days as the fire went further out of control because the Santa Ana winds were anywhere between 70 and 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Well, when they finally had a chance to get the aircraft up, Uncle Joe decides, oh, it's safe for me to fly AF-1 in. I'm going to do that so I can have the American taxpayer pay for me to see my great-grandson. Isn't that nice?
Right. Well, the only aircraft that were being allowed to fly when Joe was there were helicopters, and those winds were too powerful for helicopters. Fixed-wing aircraft could have made a dent, and they probably would have been allowed in the air. So this is another wrinkle, and it shapes up very much like Lahaina. It seems to be a perfect storm where you have a cascading failures and, in the case of Joe Biden, this extra wrinkle that prevented early firefighting capabilities to be deployed.
That's right.
So let's talk about the smart LA, the smart city thing. The plan was devised back in, I think, 2020, early 2021. You think this is motive?
Well, it may not be the motive, but it certainly is a motive. And let's face it, we're behind the times. You look at the UAE; they've already broken ground on their 15-minute city. Okay, their first 15-minute city. So, again, do I think it was the only reason? Nope, but it was a reason why this happened. You have to clear properties and force people to do what they don't want to do in order for you to accomplish your dastardly deeds.
Yeah.
And this is something that all the WEF and the CFRs want to see happen. The only way we can control the masses is to stick them into cities that we control. And that's, well, unfortunately, that's what I see the long-term future. And to go along with that, you go to people like me who live out literally in the forest, and people like us who refuse to capitulate to that kind of thinking are starved of services.
Yep. Okay?
We hear it all the time. Well, there isn't enough money for your fire department. Well, you got plenty of money to buy all this property and build walking trails. Not that I have anything against walking trails. To build all these walking trails in high and densely populated areas of the county. If you have money for that, then you should have money for the most important action you are responsible for as elected officials. Number one is public safety. Now, I'm paying taxes at the same millage rate as the people inside the city limits of the county. If I'm paying the same millage rate, I should be entitled to the same services. In some things, I'm paying a higher millage rate because there are fewer of my neighbors because we all own land. Most people who live in the cities, if they have a 6,000, 7,000 square foot postage stamp lot that they build their small home on, that's a lot. I have acreage. So For me to have the services, which I do, of a fire department that's literally within 2 miles of my house, I'm paying a higher millage rate for that service. Okay, they finally repaved the main road in my community that takes me out to the county road, which connects me to society. I just got a 50% increase on my undeveloped property that I don't live on. My taxes just went up 50%, Rudy.
Yeah.
This is what the game plan of city and county managers who went to the Kennedy School of Government are doing. Why are they doing it? They're going to starve people like me out, or they're going to make it impossible for me to afford to stay here. So I have to sell out.
Right.
Okay? That's their goal. They want people in these cities of tomorrow, better known as these 15-minute cities, that are coming.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not the fires happened in LA is irrelevant, except for timing. Okay? They're going to get their way because the elitists control too much.
Yeah.
All right. The fact that they allowed these fires to happen or created these fires, whether it was Lahaina or whether it's LA or whether it's the next disaster city. Let's talk about the hurricane. You know, people like you and I say, yeah, you can control weather. You can direct a hurricane to hit an area you want it to hit.
Or a high pressure system.
People, right. Okay, those people in the mountains of western North Carolina, in 500 years, certainly in the 400 plus years of the history of this country, there is no recording of anything like that in that part of the state having ever happened.
Yep.
When you go back and you look at the direction of Helena, it's something like that has never occurred in recorded history.
Yep.
Is that to say it could never happen? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it kind of ties in with what people like you and I say about conspiracies. Okay? Why is that? There are people who didn't want those people to vote because it was key in this past election.
Absolutely. I believe that because what has happened in the past recent years is what people have never witnessed before: hurricanes stalling over parts of land. And this happened in that section of North Carolina for hours, almost a full day. The storm just stopped and dumped all the rain there. And that's why they had those devastating floods there.
And there was no meteorologist, whether you went to Weather One or you went to weather.com or you went to your local TV or you went to Fox or the Weather Channel. There wasn't a single meteorologist, not to be confused with climatologist. There wasn't a single meteorologist who was able to explain how this happened.
Yep.
No one.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know.
And you couple that together with, in LA, insurance companies pulling out right before the disaster, months before the disaster, the wildfires happened, people's insurance was canceled, all in the affected areas that were burnt down just recently.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's an interesting story in and of itself. That is one of the few things that we Floridians share in common with Californians. The difference is how our governors dealt with that disaster, meaning insurance companies pulling out of the state. We here in Florida have been having that problem for years, even before DeSantis became governor. There were a lot of insurance companies, and when I say a lot, there's more than 24 that insure people for real estate owned holdings throughout the state of Florida. A lot of those companies are, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but you look at the financial viability of these companies. Some of them are quadruple A rated or triple A rated. Some are double rated. Some are single A rated. As you move away from how many A's are representative of the financial viability of your company. That determines whether or not during a natural disaster like a hurricane, if your insurance company is going to be able to pay off. And in the state of Florida, we had, because of both Helena and Milton, we had a half a dozen companies go belly up this year. It's not the first time it's happened. But here's what's different between Florida and California. We have had not one, not three, but 5 twice elected Republican governors in the state of Florida since I moved here in 1986. And because of that, our state has been governed in such a way of, what I call financial responsibility, that when I believe it was Rick Scott, and if it wasn't Scott, it was certainly Charlie, who first had to deal with some of these companies that were not financially viable at the time of disaster. So the state began its own insurance program. And the purpose of that was to allow people who could not get insured by Nationwide or Allstate or State Farm or pick your poison. They would always have a last ditch offering, which is Citizens. And Citizens is a semi government owned for-profit insurance company. It's owned partially by the state of Florida. It's backed by the state of Florida. And the purpose of that insurance company, they're the insurance company of last resort. You really don't want to use them because they're the most expensive, and it's really difficult to get them to pay off. My wife and I have made a lot of money off of that company, let me tell you. Anyway, point being is, our Republican governors saw a problem on the horizon that would potentially devastate not only the state, but its worthiness as a state to invest in for real estate if they didn't take action. They did. Citizens has been around for almost 20 years. Okay? Every time we've had a hurricane, yes, there are people who unfortunately were with the wrong insurance company that went belly up. They only get a small portion of what their home is really worth and what it's going to cost to put it back together. But my point is, you look at the way our Republican governors have handled this problem in the state of Florida over the past 2+ decades, and compare that to, first it was Gray Davis, and then after he was recalled, Governor Moonbeam had to come back and clean up the mess. And now you have Newsome in his second term, and they all ignored that. They all ignored the problem that the insurance companies were saying, look, we need to raise our rates. If you don't allow us to raise our rates with regard to fire concerns, we're going to pull out. So what have the insurance companies done? They've made good on their threat, because the governor and the state legislature, which is a supermajority of Democrats, said, oh, hell no, you're not going to raise your rates, you greedy little bastards. You're not going to get a dime more out of the people's pockets here in the state of California. So people who did not have a mortgage on their property, and this is something else that I've learned over the last 2 weeks, Rudy. A lot of these people in the Palisades area, those are people whose families have owned those homes mortgage-free for more than a decade.
Yep.
There was one woman's story, I think you and I talked about this off mic over the weekend. The woman is 99 years old. She bought the house in 1960. Her grandchildren now live in that house, working on the next generation of that family. They couldn't get insurance. She's lost everything.
Yep.
So Tell me something, new scum. What about that family?
Yeah.
What are you going to do for them?
I think you're a little too generous in thinking that the insurance companies aren't part of the conspiracy. They easily could just tell the California legislature to go ahead and restrict us, and then we'll pull out, and then we won't be on the hook for the amount of damage.
Well, they did that.
Yeah, for the amount of damage you're about to cause. Yeah.
Right. They did that. There are very few people anywhere, whether it's Eaton, Palisades, or even L.A. All these people whose homes have been destroyed, very few of them have insurance. Right. The ones who do, I have to assume, nobody's talked about this, so I don't know, but I have to assume the people who do have insurance, that's mandated because that house is under a mortgage.
Yeah.
And if it's been mortgaged, either you, as the owner of that domicile, or your bank, who really is the owner of that domicile,
right,
is going to have insurance for just this reason.
Yeah.
But here's the problem: if your bank has the insurance, which, by the way, you're still paying for, okay?
Yeah.
That house burns down, you're not going to see a penny.
Yeah.
It's going to the bank.
Yeah, of course. And I think there's another wrinkle that we haven't discussed is the fact that the environmental regulations with the planning and zoning boards are going to be put into place here that it's going to make it almost impossible for people to rebuild.
Oh, well, I'm glad you brought that up because you're exactly right. There's a separate environmental board called the Coastal Committee. All these people who had homes on the rocks facing the Pacific Ocean, and their front door faced the Palisades Parkway, okay? All those people, in order to build a home there, you have to go through a 2-year process, not with building and zoning, but with the Coastal Committee. I think it's called the Coastal Environmental Committee. And they first decide whether or not they're going to let you build on your own property because you're sitting on the rocks. Now, what's interesting about that is if any of your pilings are in the ocean, now there's a whole nother bureaucracy you have to go through, and that's the United States Army Corps of Engineers. So when it comes to the Pacific Coastal Highway, if your property sat on those rocks, you were looking at a 2-year process just to be able to then take your plans and give it to planning and zoning. Okay? The people that live up in the hills were all screaming. Matter of fact, there were a couple of small-time developers who own 2, 3, or 4 homes. And one guy in particular over the weekend said, it took me 4 years to build this house. From the time I got the property to the time the home was completed and given a certificate of occupancy, it took me 4 years. How long do you think it's going to take me now to build when there's no infrastructure here?
Right.
So you bring up an important point. Now, what did Newscomb say? Well, we're going to fast track all that. Okay, that's what you're saying now. What are you really going to say when the cameras are taken off your sorry ass?
Yeah, like he's not a liar.
Right.
When people trust known liars, I don't know why. Why don't we switch gears a little bit and talk about Trump? So last week, Trump avoided punishment in his supposed hush money case. It was really a cobbled together campaign finance violation case. Wasn't really a hush money case because you can, have NDAs with people. So he avoids all sentencing, all penalty in a case that shouldn't even be brought. So is he still a convict? Isn't he a convict? And also I want to ask you, so you could go right into whether or not you think and to what extent he's going to pardon the January 6 folks, and who do you think he's going to pardon?
Well, let's start with this ridiculous act of lawfare. I don't want to take too much of our time tonight to try and connect every single dot for your viewers. But to put it in a nutshell, for those who haven't been following your podcast for the past 2 years, Alvin Bragg took what was a state election statute, which, by the way, had already run the gamut, meaning the statute of limitations on this misdemeanor law no longer applied. So in order to still be able to go after Trump, they then took that statute and applied it to a federal statute that had no bearing whatsoever on what Alvin Bragg was trying to do. So then they now tie that together. By the way, they had to change the New York State election law in order to do that.
Yeah, well,
once they did that and they brought charges against Trump, they then quickly reversed that law and put it back to a misdemeanor. But now they have gone after Trump and indicted him on what they consider is a state infraction, but under federal charges. That's what they did. So this is how they had to twist the law into pretzels in order to get to where they got. Now let's talk about Marchand and how he completely ignored the law. He made his decision to not allow Trump's defense to move forward and bring in a federal judge whose responsibility was directly related to that very federal statute that Marchand used with Bragg to get Trump. They would not allow this man to give his testimony because with that testimony, there's no case. So therefore, Marchand said to the Trump defense team, no, you can't have that particular witness. They also put a gag order on Trump and his entire legal team while Bragg was able to say whatever the fuck he wanted for the past year. All of this was accomplished. And then finally, when it came to handing this case to the jury came back to the judge several times during their deliberations and said, we cannot come to complete agreement on any of these charges. What did Marchand say? He made legal history with this case. He said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you don't have to agree on every single charge. We just need you to agree on something, and then we can convict. So they went back, and some of the jury members said, well, we agree with these charges. Some of the jury members said, well, we agree with those charges. And then they handed all of that to the judge and said, the defense is guilty. This is what they tried to do successfully to Trump. So once it goes through, now we could talk about how both the state appeals court and the United States Supreme Court refused to hear Trump's issues regarding this and how it should have been thrown out. In a nutshell, appeals court and Supreme Court of the United States wants adjudication to be complete before they want to listen to your argument why the decision to find you guilty should be thrown out. That's the unfortunate part. The fortunate part is whether or not the state of New York's Court of Appeals humiliates this corrupt judge in New York City and threatens him with disbarment for what he's done to this country.
Yeah. Well, you know,
whether or not they do it,
yeah,
the United States Supreme Court will ultimately find in favor of Trump. And what will that mean? That will mean that Aldous Magnus is 4 for 4. He's now batting 1,000 against every one of these corrupt DAs and state attorney generals.
Yep.
Every one of them.
Yeah, even
it's going to happen.
Yeah, Dershowitz said there's no way that this case survives appeal because he's never seen such a case brought. He said it's absolutely ridiculous. So what about, we got January 6th defendants. Trump said he's going to pardon some, all. We still have, and Trump even mentioned it, the FBI knows who planted the bomb. Why aren't they saying the pipe bombs on January 6th?
Well, not only did he say that, we probably don't want to go there tonight, maybe we will.
Yeah.
He also said that the United States government knows who's flying these drones. They just don't want to tell anybody.
Yeah.
He already knows who it is. He's not the president of the United States, so he can't say it yet.
Right.
But that's going to be talked about in the coming days.
Well, right. There are a lot of things coming down the pike. Some are going to be protected by national security, obviously. But then we talked about the fall of the left and all their ideas. It's really going to come crashing down. It really bothers me that Joe Biden evoked Ike talking about the technological elite and oligarchy and stuff like that, when Trump said he's going to release the rest of the JFK files, which is going to implicate the CIA. So then we'll really know, and hopefully Kash Patel and it slips my mind, the guy that is going to be the head of the CIA. Ratcliffe, thank you. So
not only those two men, and not to steal your thunder, Rudy, because what you just said is vitally important. But you got to throw into that mix those two guys. You got to throw Pam Bondi in there too.
Yep, she did.
Because without Pam Bondi backing Kash Patel, Kash can't do what he needs to do.
Yeah, and she did stellar today, by the way, if you saw any of the confirmation. So
I saw clips. She humiliated them just like Pete humiliated them yesterday.
Yeah,
I was waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, she said we're not going to be like the president administration. we're not going to commit lawfare and go after our political enemies. That's not what we do. So
right. So getting back to the J6ers, look, Trump has said this from the get-go, and it's going to be one of the many things he does after taking the oath of office. Now, what I expect him to do, and Pam Bondi is going to be involved in this, probably Kash Patel. They're going to look at every single case. And I think you and I, we may have talked about this in a prior show over the past month or so. Anyone who walked into that building and committed any type of violence or damage to the building or anything other than peaceful protest, they're going to have to be dealt with in a separate way. And the way I think we should do it, after all the grandmothers and grandfathers, after all the college kids who went there wearing their Trump hats, not MAGA, but Trump hats, after all these people who were naively led into the building by people like Ray Epps, and there were others, we now, everything that people like you and I have been saying for 4 fucking years, that the CIA and especially the FBI had fucking agents that were encouraging people to rush the building.
Yeah. Army intelligence.
We're going to get those people.
Army intelligence, right. And even Trump brought up scaffold commander, which surprised everybody. I mean, he brought up Ray Epps, he's known, but a lot of people don't talk about scaffold commander, who had an earpiece and was doing exactly what Ray Epps suggested and was urging people to go into the Capitol.
Correct. And it wasn't just them. We know as a fact there were 6 FBI agents.
Yeah.
And there were over 20 FBI, I don't want to call them informants.
Assets.
But there's a different assets. That's the word I was looking for. There were over 20 assets that were involved in getting innocent people to step from the curb onto the steps and go into the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Well, why did they want them to do that? They wanted them to do that so that they could stop what the Republicans in the House and Senate were trying to do, and that was to put a halt to the counting and verification. Yeah. Correct, certification.
Yep.
So that there was enough time to actually look at these votes.
Right.
That's what this was all about.
Right.
And you've said it many times. That was the reason for the bombers.
Right.
Or the bomber.
The bomber, it unleashed, because it happened in the morning. Why did it happen in the morning? So it allowed them to unleash other military and intelligence assets because of, bombs being weapons of mass destruction. Immediately that unleashes a whole different wave and level of investigative priorities and procedures.
Correct. So as far as the J6ers are concerned, the first thing is whatever numbers of J6ers who are still being held to this day in the D.C. city jail, if they are not being held on anything except trespassing, they're going to get released. The grandmothers and grandfathers who just went there to voice their political argument, they're going to be pardoned. There are going to be, I shouldn't say thousands because I think it was less than 2,000 people in total.
Yeah.
But there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of people who are going to get pardoned. And let's talk about those people for a second. There were hundreds that were jailed. They were jailed and held without charge for many months.
Yeah.
They lost their ability to earn a living. They lost their homes. Some of them lost their families.
Some guy died of cancer.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, guy died of cancer in jail, yeah.
And how many people got sick from mold inhalation, while being held? All of this was done to innocent American citizens who just went there for redress of their disagreement with the government.
And that's what even Putin said. And the thing is to unleash a wave of investigation into law-abiding conservatives and Trump supporters, and that's what it unleashed also. I think one of the main things we have to look at here is some of the lengthy prison sentences given to Oath Keepers and Proud Boys for a seditious conspiracy, because those guys didn't even get violent. So that is going to be the real case. We're going to take aside the people that fought with police and broke windows and all that stuff. So we're really dealing with trespassers who, for the most part, simple trespass is like nothing. It's a misdemeanor, and most people who trespass never get jail time. And then the other thing is a seditious conspiracy with Enrique Tarrio and the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys.
Right. And as a comparison, no one from the other political party ever has an answer for the question that people like us put to them, which is, well, if you want to say that the law is applied equally, can you please explain to me how it is people who tore down historical monuments, people who burned cities to the ground, people who destroyed businesses of minority-owned minority-owned businesses, destroyed them. How is it was okay for them to have violent political speech and not be held accountable? All you have to do is go to the current vice president who said and sent money to get these people out of jail. How come they were allowed out of jail? But people who sought redress of their political argument against the government, somehow or other, they're the people that should be locked up and put away.
Yeah, it's just the opposite. The place to protest or protest your political grievance is at your state or national capital, It's not burning down the local Target or looting Target or whatever. That's completely.
Well, let's not even. I'm not even talking about Target or Walmart. I'm talking about the black business owner, the person whose entire net worth is in that 20-foot wide, 60-foot long storefront, selling beauty aids or selling candy or selling nuts and bolts as a small hardware store. They are the anchors of that community.
Yeah.
These are the people in the black community I support, because they're showing the next generation of blacks you can be successful too. But they were burned out of their buildings by none other than Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. Well,
and yet nobody.
Leftist thugs. You know, it's not just Black Lives Matter. There were plenty of whites out there, Antifa and what have you. It's the shock troops, the brown shirts of the Democratic Party.
Correct.
Correct.
And that's what you and I have called them.
Yeah, strike fear into the local populace and business owners and stuff, and that's what they do. And the left has always supported crime, organized crime, and turn a blind eye to it, and just say, when we need you, we'll let you know. The other thing that happened at the Capitol was actually, I think, more laudable for sure, because they went to the seat of power and they stood out there and protested, and it was a rally that turned into a protest, that turned into a riot. But we got to look at the crimes. Like I said, these guys that were sent for 50 years, 25 years for seditious conspiracy. Come on. I don't think these guys are going to overthrow the government.
Well, not only should you look at it that simply, my argument is far deeper than that. Why were they brought up on the charges in the first place?
Yeah.
Okay. Under the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States, I have the very right to do what they did. Not what they're accused of,
right.
What they did. And you know what, Rudy? By grace of God, I would have loved to have been there on January 6, 2021. I couldn't. I had responsibilities. I had to be places to help clients.
Yeah.
But my wife and I talked about it.
Yeah. I had a bad feeling. I saw trap written all over that. It was like going to be 1 million people, and I thought that was great. But there was going to be, the reason people went to the Capitol is that there was going to be another rally at the Capitol.
Correct.
After Trump.
Correct.
And Trump was even going to attend that other rally. People are talking about Trump wanted to go to the Capitol to help the rioters. No, there was another rally planned there. And they never even talk about that. The real crime was indeed the January 6th committee. Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, and Rats. What's that other rat tail guy?
You're not talking.
Rats.
You're not talking about who I call is Sheriff Woody. You're not talking about Shifty Shift.
No, not Shift. No, not Shift. Not Ratzinger. What the hell is that guy's name?
Gosh.
Rat. He's the guy from Maryland.
Jamie
Ratskin. That's
Ratskin.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
That's why you and I are stuck on Rat, because he is a rat.
He's the worst. But all those guys, they destroyed all the evidence, all the behind the scenes interviews, including with Ray Epps. They destroyed all the evidence that they looked at, all the film, everything. They destroyed it all. Now,
let's talk about that for a second.
Right there, that's a crime.
Right. Let's talk about that for a second. Come January 20th, their actions are going to be taken a look at, and they're going to be held not in contempt, but they are going to be held for their responsibility in destroying all this evidence, which is a federal felony.
Yeah.
And I said this to you, and I probably said it to you off mic a couple of weeks ago, because you and I have had conversations in private about all these pardons that Biden is handing out like candy. He has not handed out any pardons to the J6 subcommittee yet. I'm waiting to see if he does. Yeah. He's got 5 more days to do it. And I told you, Rudy, even if he does it, every one of these motherfuckers, every one of these traitors can still be tried as an unindicted co-conspirator.
Yep.
Granted, with that pardon, they'll never spend a day in jail. Yep. You know what? I would much rather spit on that Cheney bitch's face and say traitor to her than have her locked up in jail.
Yeah.
I'll get more satisfaction from kicking her in the ass and saying to her traitor than having her go behind what they call the Gray Bar Hotel for a few months.
Yeah, where
I want my pound of flesh.
Yeah.
For what these people did to our country.
Well, the first thing they would have to do is subpoena the evidence that the January 6th committee destroyed, and then they would have destroyed federal evidence, and right there's your crime. Who else?
Right.
Who else destroyed federal evidence? I don't know.
Would that be Hildebeest Clinton?
I don't know. I think so. What happened to the emails?
Yeah, wasn't it then FBI Director Comey who said there isn't a prosecutor in the country that would ever bring charges and conduct a case against Hillary Clinton for this?
Right. Not an Alvin Bragg, not a Merrick Garland, not a Letitia James, not a Fannie Willis. They wouldn't.
But a Pam Bondi would.
Yeah, but a Pam Bondi definitely would. Any other parting words before we close out here, Perry?
Well, first the mea culpa. It looks like my prediction, one of a few that I've been wrong on, so I might as well admit it now because by next Tuesday, it won't matter. I did say before Uncle Joe leaves office on January 20th, my prediction was that he was going to leave before January 20th. I didn't know if it was going to be in December or after New Year's, but I did predict to your audience he was going to force Donaldus Magnus to become POTUS number 48, not 47, by resigning office and allowing Kamala to take the position of POTUS, whether it was for a day or a week or a month. I really, really believed that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I guess Jill has said over my dead body.
Yeah, right. Well, I was thinking there's still a couple days, so it could happen.
It could happen. Wouldn't it be hysterical if I turn out to be right on this prediction?
Well, it would. I was kind of wondering why I saw Kamala Harris during the last press conference with Joe Biden. She had this shit-eating grin like the cat that ate the canary. I'm like, what the fuck is she smiling about?
Well, maybe I might turn out to be right on this after all.
Yeah, we'll revisit it on Tuesday, and we'll have a little celebration next Tuesday after the great inauguration. Hopefully, everything goes safely, and Godspeed to Donald Trump there, and may he take office as he put his hand on the Bible and get sworn in without any disastrous effects, because we're all worried about his safety. Who knows what's going to happen? So we just pray for him.
And always pray for him, pray for our country, pray for each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
God hears our prayers.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's continue to look forward to these next 4 years. And
hopefully you straighten this shit out, and just the blue hairs, they just fade into the background, and we go on with running the country in peace and prosperity.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. What a great way to leave the podcast for this evening.
Yeah. God bless you, my friend.
Right back at you. May he bless us all.
All right. God bless us, everyone.
All right, Rudy. Thank you for, again, giving me the chance to speak. And Have a great remainder of the week. I look forward to us talking next week.
All right. Peace out, brother.
Take care.
See you.
Bye-bye.
There goes Perry, episode 102 of Tuesday with Perry. Thanks for joining us tonight. Sorry it's a day late and $1 short. I think we covered everything today, so that's good. If you saw Joe Biden try to speak tonight in his farewell address, I'm sorry. Sorry that happened. I tried to watch it. I really couldn't. And I know Perry couldn't watch it either. But my wife kept calling out, he fucked up again. He can't speak. But it really, we've been quoting the Eisenhower speech for years, railing against the military-industrial complex. We don't want war, and Trump knows that. And against the technological elite that we know that the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski was complaining about also. I don't think that's what, well, hopefully Elon Musk isn't part of that. We'll see. I don't really trust the guy, but that's just me. Anyway, thanks for joining us tonight. Join me tomorrow and every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. for the Rudy's Revelation podcast, and every Tuesday for our editions of Tuesdays with Perry. Have a great night. Peace out.